Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we will talk about the common faults in the primary impression of a complete denture. We discussed this subject in a previous video, but it was a brief, short discussion, and I wanted to detail this subject because of its importance. Inshallah, this will be the last video regarding the primary impression, and after that we will shift to the special tray and final impression and so on. So we will start with the common faults and errors in the lower primary impression. The first is too much material at the front of the tray. The excess flows into the floor of the mouth, distorting lingual sulcus and restricting tongue movement, as you can see in the picture down below. The lower composition impression showing excess material in the anterior lingual area. This is excess material in the anterior lingual area. It will cause two things. It will distort the lingual sulcus and restrict tongue movement. So never put too much material in the front of the tray. The second is that inadequate extension into the posterior lingual area. As you can see in the picture here, lower composition showing inadequate extension into the lingual area. This is deficiency here and here. What can cause this? First is tongue not lifted above the lingual flange of the tray and thus preventing flow of material into the posterior lingual area. The second, insufficient impression compound. Third, material incorrectly formed in the tray. So you place most of the material anteriorly and there is little lift posteriorly. The third is underextended tray. Other fault is inadequate extension into the labial sulcus. What can cause this? First, the lip being too tight. Second, the patient did not close his jaws and the lip was not pulled forward when the impression was seated. So this is the third fault. Is that the labial sulcus is not recorded correctly. Either the lip is too tight, or we did not pull the lip forward when the impression seated, or the patient did not close his jaw slightly when taking the impression. The other fault is cheek trapped in impression. The impression was seated without stretching the cheeks aside before positioning the tray. So before positioning the tray into its final position, we have to retract the cheeks to prevent them from trapping under the impression. Now let's talk about the common faults and errors in the upper primary impression. The first is incomplete impression of the palate due to insufficient materials or failure to seat impression completely. This will also occur if the impression material is allowed to cool and has therefore lost its property of flow. So we have three causes for incomplete impression of the palate. Either the material cooled down and it no longer has the flow property, or insufficient material, or we didn't seat the impression completely into its position. The other fault is deficiency in the labial sulcus. It is similar to what we saw in the lower impression, is that the mouth opened too wide when the tray was being seated, so the lip was tight. The lip was not lifted forward to allow the compound to flow. The same causes of deficiency of labial sulcus in the lower impression are also causes of deficiency of labial sulcus in the upper impression. The other fault in the upper primary impression of a complete denture, deficiency in the tuberosity region. As you can see in this picture, the tuberosity region has a deficiency. mouth open too wide when the tray was being seated, with obstruction of the tuberosity sulcus by the coronoid process of the mandible. We know that if the patient opens his mouth very widely, it will cause the coronoid process to block the tuberosity sulcus. Failure to adapt compound in tray before taking impression. So we have two causes: either we fail to adapt the compound in the tray before taking impression, so we have to ensure that there is impression compound in the tuberosity area, and secondly, we have to make sure that the patient does not open his mouth widely so that the coronoid process of the mandible does not block the tuberosity sulcus. Thank you for watching, and inshallah in the next video we'll talk about the special tray and so on. في أمان الله.